When I started learning how all of this was done, it was like, wow, people are doing fashion really, really badly. Like, this is not okay. You know, asking, what do these companies do? Surely it's hard to sell everything. Sizes get mismatched and everything, returns. What happens? And then you realize, like, they actually do just go to landfills. It's cheaper to dump them.
Today's guest is Monica Millington, founder of Sette, one of the most aesthetically pleasing and soulful fashion brands coming out of Singapore. In this episode, we talk about what it really takes to build a founder-led brand, create content that converts, and balance all of that with being a motherhood without having a blueprint. Follow us whenever you get your podcasts, and let's get straight into it. Hi, Monica. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Let's jump straight into it. Was there a moment like that for you when you started Sette, and sort of like what was that leap of faith?
Well, I guess that my answer to this kind of helps tell my story a little bit and like who I am and how I got here, I guess. But I come from a family of entrepreneurs. My grandfather started a real estate business back in the 80s. My father carried the torch when he passed away. And so my dad has always been a very creative entrepreneur and always encouraged me to do that. Whenever I told him I was, job hunting or looking for a corporate job, he was always like, that's not for you. And so I was always encouraged and enabled to kind of go after my own path. And so when I eventually landed in Singapore in 2017, I kind of did the corporate thing for a little bit to get my feet wet and very quickly realized that the corporate path was not for me. And I had run a few businesses in the past back in the States. And so I kind of felt like I had spent enough time here and I was ready to really dive in and start my own business. And I think my biggest maybe flaw and or strength is that I don't really think too much before I do something. And I just always say I'm going to figure it out as I go. And that's kind of what motivated me to start a brand is I just didn't really know what I was doing. I had faith that I'd figure it out along the way and learn how to do it. And that was my motivation to start a company. Now, starting out Sette was an evolution, and I think it is for every founder. And I think that's also such an important story to tell to people because we're fed so much like content on social media of like, oh, this founder did it and they made 5 million in their first year and they're blowing up. And that's just like not the norm. That's great, but that is not the norm. And I started off with a menswear brand and I was doing men's shirts. And over time it evolved to kind of beachy lounge sets. And then after a while, I started doing content creation for myself and my own personal brand. And I wanted to wear my product. And I was like, why am I making menswear? I should be making women's wear. And I started, creating women's beachy lounge sets. And then, post-COVID, things kind of evolved and the world got out of the loungewear era as like we were so deeply in at the time. And I just kind of, I guess, stopped trying to be what everyone else wanted me to be or what I thought everyone wanted me to be. And I just started designing for myself. And that's really, I would say, when Sette got its start, 2024. I started the business in end of 2020, and now 2024 is really when I feel like I got moving.
Oh, wow. So it's actually been a few years of trying to test a few different things, like try different avenues before you really like settled in and said like, this is also like almost going to be like, would you say it like a second coming of Sette being like, we are like relaunching?
That's exactly what I would call it. Yeah, I'm hesitant to use the word rebrand, but I guess it was a rebrand. It was a reintroduction to my community for sure.
Yeah, and you also mentioned you founded the brand first and then you later started creating content and sort of developing your personal brand online. Did you start posting on TikTok and Instagram with intention of being the founder-led brand or was it just something that was your calling? You're like, I just want to put stuff out there.
Yeah, it was kind of a mix of things. So in 2020, we were all figuring out what we wanted to do with our lives, weren't we? One way or the other. I ended up going on a reality show called The Apprentice. And that was it was kind of like, I'm stuck at home. I can't leave Singapore. Might as well. And I had just launched the business. So it was a great opportunity for me to further the brand and get more exposure. And so I said, why not? This is a business reality TV show. I just started a business. This is great alignment. And, who knows? I can start posting on social media and we'll see if anything comes of it. And then I started posting and, I think a lot of people really tried to stay on the Apprentice TV show type of content. And for me, that just didn't feel natural to me because that's not really who I am. I'm not this business thought leader. I'm just a girl. I'm just a girl just trying to figure it out.
And the show was very it was very it was
very intense.
I watched it, it was very intense.
If you want to watch me be a complete fish out of water, it was just a really fun experience. And it encouraged me to put myself out there on social media. So I started doing that and I kind of just showed up every day as myself. I mean, there were definite growing pains within, that line of work as well. But I started putting myself out there and just kind of slowly sharing the journey, life in Singapore, starting a business, going to pop-up events, and kind of just the more I shared, the more I got out of it. And so that's kind of how that has evolved. And I'm sure we'll dive into like the whole brand and storytelling and stuff in a bit, but it was a learning curve, because at the beginning I really wanted the brand to look like this big, well-oiled machine and this super professional, successful brand. And I really didn't tie myself to it very much. And I was kind of content creating, and yeah, I'd share my story, but it wasn't like driving the brand. And the brand's page was very kind of what I thought everyone else wanted it to be. It was, professional model shoots. It was very clean cut. Everything was just very
polished and
very
beautiful.
polished, exactly. And then, over time, my personal social media really started growing. And I had followers and friends say, "Oh my gosh, I didn't know you had a brand." And I was like, "Oh, I'm doing something wrong." So
like,
that is when I was like, I'm doing something really wrong, because that's all I do all day is my brand. And my social media is kind of the fun, extra thing that I get to do. And when I really started tying those two together, that's what made the difference with the brand. And that's what triggered this whole, relaunch, rebrand. And that's what's triggered like the growth of my customer base and the amount of events that I've been able to do in Singapore, and my collection selling out, all because I've put my face on the brand.
Well, that actually segues perfectly into our next section, being the face of your brand. So you are very much the face of Sette, like you've mentioned, and you do it so naturally. Like it's a very perfect fit.
Oh, thank you.
A lot of founders out there, they really struggle with fronting their brand, and it might feel unnatural, might go against their nature. What would be your advice to founders out there?
You're not gonna like it. Make it natural. It is painful for everyone when they start out. I mean, yes, I'm a little bit extroverted, if you can't tell. But in the beginning, I remember just toiling over my first story post. I could not talk to the camera. I could not post anything. Posting my face that wasn't just a curated like beach picture. Like I just couldn't do it. It was so scary. And, I knew that in order to do that, to be able to be successful at this, I had to get comfortable with that. And, at first I was probably showing up once a week, or I'd get perfection paralysis and not show up for a whole month. And obviously you can't grow anything that way. And so I told myself I really had to commit. And 2022 maybe, I kind of made a challenge for myself and said, I'm going to show up here every single day. I don't care if something doesn't perform, or if it does perform, I need to be on here every day. I need to be posting every single day. Let's just give that a try. And if it doesn't work, I don't have to keep doing it. And, my following doubled, and then it doubled again, and then it doubled again. And so it was like, okay, something's working here. I need to be doing this. And guess what? The more that I was posting, the easier it got to post. That like now a camera can come on me and it does not faze me. I can sit there, I can blast out a TikTok in 2 minutes, and I can edit it really quickly, because, you put in 10,000 hours, you can be an expert at anything. And so if you're not doing the practice, you're not going to be able to do it. So I think, and everyone will have their different strengths. There's creators of all types out there. There's brands that are doing content in so many different ways. It could be if you are absolutely terrified of the camera and you know that is never going to change, or you just public speaking is your biggest fear and you're never going to be able to do it. I say, first of all, practice it, because public speaking used to be my biggest fear, and it's fine now.
Look at you now.
Yeah, it's fine. But I think, the more, everyone has their different flavor. It could be a POV vlog where you kind of just share your journey and your story with, a little POV of your day. Or it could be, the people that you surround yourself with. I mean, there's just a million ways to workshop that and find something that works for you. You just have to be doing it consistently. And it gets so much easier once you do it. So what stresses you out now is not going to stress you out tomorrow.
Because you're very consistent with your own social media, obviously, and you show a lot of your personal life. Is it difficult for you to sometimes find the line? Like, how much do you show of your personal life? How much do you show of the behind the scenes? And how do you weave like storytelling into that organically?
Okay, so for, showing and sharing my life and my story on social media, I kind of set some boundaries in the very beginning, and I am very open. Like I do share the majority of stuff, but, out of respect for my husband, who has a private corporate job, and he's also not not the one choosing to show up on social media every day. And also my son, I like to share funny snippets of my son, but he's also not choosing to be on social media. So I want to respect, his boundaries as well. So I kind of set some like core boundaries for myself of stuff that I'm not going to ever be that creator that's going to show that side of things. But I do think that I can have my life experience and share takeaways. And that's where I can be really authentic about, marriage and friendships and motherhood and all that kind of stuff without sharing, my very personal stuff. Not to get religious, but there's a verse in the Bible that says, don't feed your pearls to pigs. And I really stand by that. Like, I don't share the most precious things in my life to the rest of the world to tear down and criticize. And that's why it is easy for me to show up every day, because I know whatever stones people want to throw at me online, when something goes viral, social media gets crazy. People are going to, as you've seen on social media today, brands are being torn apart on social media. Founders are being torn apart, and just creators in general get torn apart every day. And I can show up every day, and my friends ask me, how do you deal with the hate comments? I'm like, because they don't know me. Who cares what they say? Like, let the snails throw rocks. That's completely fine. They don't know me, so they can't actually hurt me. They can't actually reach me. And so I can sit there and, kind of make fun of myself and be vulnerable on there. And it's not going to affect me what people say, because I know that they don't actually know me. And I know that they don't actually know the context. And people are just very easily angered online. So that understanding and having that kind of barrier there helps me share all the other stuff. And again, also having that personal boundary of like protecting, my inner peace and my family. I think that's kind of the sweet spot. Because people do, like, if I only shared about the company, I don't think it would have the same effect, because, no one likes perfect. And if you're just showing this perfectly curated company every single day, people don't really understand. Like, I always say, and I'm not saying my followers are toddlers, but talk to your audience. It's kind of a marketing thing. Talk to your audience like they're 6-year-olds. You do need to explain things, and you do need to be clear about things. And so for me, I can't just have this perfect brand, expect that people are going to get it. I like to go in and they'll be like, hey guys, this is my photo shoot today. This is how crazy it was. Everything went wrong, but guess what? We got the pictures. I cannot wait to share them with you guys. People are now excited to see the pictures because I got to kind of share the story behind it. Everyone loves the story. I get to talk about the sustainability instead of, putting up there that I've got this perfect sustainable brand. I don't make those claims, but I can go in and say, hey, we're ethically made in Bali by a group of female artisans, and they're amazing. Meet the team. And here's the fabric markets where we go and we select all of our fabrics that are locally made as well. We produce in small batches. We use natural fibers because that's better for the environment, but it's also better for the climate that we're in. And so I share the story that way, and people are more invested, and people understand the sustainability that we're implementing into Sette a bit more than just saying we're a sustainable green brand. And so I just think it's very key to be able to share this whole journey, because people get invested and people care because people see the work and the love and the heart that's been put into it.
No, 100%. Like, even personally, I remember watching some of your reels when I was in the depths of postpartum, your mental health suffers, everything suffers. And I remember watching, I don't remember what the reel was about, but it made me feel so good, because I thought, like, oh my God, like, she's also gone through some stuff, it's like look at that, like, it's the perfect life that you can see, like, there's still a human behind it that also goes through some stuff. Like, maybe I don't know what happened, or I don't know what's gone on, but I know, okay, like, you've got your own stuff, and it kind of makes you relate to someone and emotionally invest in you before you even know someone's watching.
Yeah, agreed completely. And it makes you feel like you're not alone at all. And again, I think it's so important. I have this crazy life story. It got me to Singapore. We can get into that later. But I went through a lot of lows to get to a good place. And, I went through moving countries and a divorce and a remarriage and, starting a business and failing at that, and then trying again, and then having a kid and trying to manage and juggle all these things. And I think, like, right now, my gosh, like, my husband is a dream. He's just the most wonderful man in the whole world. And I love my son, and I'm loving motherhood. But that would be really obnoxious if you didn't know that I went through a lot of shit to get there. Sorry, can I swear?
Yeah.
I think it's, for me, it's important to share that I went through so many life lessons. I went through so many tough things to get to the good. And so I think that's encouraging for people that maybe might be in the thick of it, and to say, like, oh, like, I'm in the thick of it now, but that doesn't mean that it's not going to get better in the future. Because I really like to share that, I'm going to go through it again at some point in my life. It's going to be tough again, and then I'm going to get out of the valley again, and it's going to get easier again. And so it's important to share that story so people can remember that when they're in the thick of it, that it's going to be hard, and you keep doing the work, and you keep going through it, and it's going to get better.
100%. And let's touch on the sustainability part of building Sette. So you mentioned that you are producing everything in Bali in small batches, and I love watching your like little vlogs when you go to the fabric markets and you make the audience feel really involved in the choosing of the fabrics and really create a sense of co-creation of each collection that comes out. What made you choose Bali in particular?
Well, once I started kind of getting into the clothing manufacturing world, you do realize how big and wasteful it can be. And I kind of played with a few factories in China, and I'm not saying China's not great. There's all levels. But I do think the even just the bare minimums, like the minimums that they require of you, whether it's a great factory or not a great factory, what they're asking for you straight up, because for them, they work on very large scales. So what is small for them is huge for a small brand. And I remember seeing these numbers and I was like, this does not make sense. How is someone supposed to come in with an intentional brand, with intentional designs, wanting to create small, build her customer base and grow organically? How was anyone supposed to do that with these numbers? So that never made sense to me. And I did do one run with those minimums. And, I wanted to have a whole collection of designs. So therefore multiply that by 10 to 20. And all of a sudden you're dealing with some insane numbers for a small solo founded brand. And it's been an unbelievable amount of work to get rid of all of those numbers. And in the beginning, obviously launch went amazing. The numbers were amazing. I was like, we keep up this trajectory, we're going to be killing it. But then you realize, as you learn and you get to know your audience, I guess the allure wears off at some point. It gets less exciting. It's okay, that was great, loved it, I bought it. Now I need something new from you. And for me, I was like, oh, you want something new? Well, I only have the stuff that I just bought. And so I was dealing with this just massive inventory that I was trying to get rid of. And I had to put a lot of time and energy into figuring out how to get rid of inventory. And all of a sudden, for about a year, I couldn't spend any energy doing what I loved most, which was designing and creating and, creating new content with the new pieces. And I really got stuck in a rut and I really considered shutting down because I was like, I don't want to be doing this. I cannot. So I knew that if, working with these big factories was like my only avenue, I knew it was not going to work for me. And I had, getting into the industry, I had started hearing of all these amazing brands that were based in Bali. And, my husband and myself, we travel to Bali all the time. It's our favorite. It's our happy place. And the shopping in Bali is incredible and the style there is immaculate. And so we just had so much fun shopping there. I was like, surely there's something here because, all these amazing brands are being made here. So I just need to, I can figure it out. I can do this. But it's also not online, right? None of this is online. So you can't just Google where to manufacture in Bali. There might be one or two places, but they're going to be the same deal. They're big and overpriced and high minimums. So I really just had to decide for about a year. I decided, a year before it actually happened, I said, I'm going to look for a place in Bali. I'm not going to produce any more in China. And just because I couldn't deal with those numbers. And so I was just on the hunt. I was asking everyone that I knew, do you know anyone that manufactures in Bali? And I'd get a recommendation here and there. I got one lead. I was like, yes, okay, this is it. This is going to change for me. Went to Bali, did the sampling, met the guy, got 3 rounds of samples, and none of them were up to the quality that I wanted them to be. And then people have said because they're smaller places, the quality can be hit or miss. And so I was like, oh, well, dreams are dashed. I'm not doing it anymore. And so I had a few more feelers out, and then randomly in like July of 2024, someone mentioned something to me and said, oh, I have a contact actually, just go and check him out. And so I said, you know what? I'm going to go. I'm just going to do it. This is like my last chance. If I can't figure it out, I'm done.
Yeah.
And I went to Bali. I made an appointment with this one person and I did a lot of digging and found 2 more people to meet. So I said, I just need to meet 3 and I'll figure it out from there. And the last person that I added to the list was the first person I met. And that ended up being my manufacturer. And she is just amazing at what she does. She is really, she works with me on all my designs. She knows what I like, so she can make changes from abroad pretty easily. The quality's been incredible. She's got her team of women that do this. So you're supporting real women with real families. And I've been to her home and, we work together so well and it's just such a mutually beneficial relationship. And so that really changed it for me. And I think, kind of to tie up this whole Bali thing, what was really important for me with the brand was when people, because I'm a solo founder, because it is so personal to me, when people ask me about the brand, I wanted to be proud with every answer I responded with. So I didn't want to be like, oh, I don't know, is this a factory in China? I haven't been there yet. And that there's nothing wrong with that. But for me personally, I really wanted to know who that was. I wanted to have, transparency over everything in my business. I wanted to know where the fabrics came from. I wanted to be sure like what they were made of. I wanted to be sure there wasn't a whole bunch of wastage going on and unethical practices. And so that's the point that I wanted to get to. And it took me a long time to get there and a lot of persistence, but that's the one thing that I'm really proud of now about the brand is how we're made and how we do things. And I'm not saying we're this perfectly sustainable brand. My goal was always, when I started learning how all of this was done, it was like, wow, people are doing fashion really, really badly. Like, this is not okay. Asking, what do these companies do? Surely it's hard to sell everything. Sizes get mismatched and everything, returns. What happens? And then you realize like they actually do just go to landfills. It's cheaper to dump them.
It's like,
and you're like, oh my gosh, that is absolutely insane. And I just cannot fathom. I mean, even just one box of clothes, one unsold box, I cannot imagine dumping that in the garbage. So for me personally, I couldn't ethically create a brand that was doing things that way. And so that was why we kind of implemented the core values before we even got started. Everything was non-negotiable. Like, this is how things have to be done.
And I think that's what's very special about you as a founder and Sette as a brand, because I know that process can be just incredibly excruciating because it's so easy just to go and say like, like, okay, like I'll do like cut corners here and there, like nobody needs to know, it's fine. But like having these non-negotiable lines where you say, you know what, like this is what I want, like I'm not going to feel good about it and I want to be able to tell my story authentically. I think that's what really, you can really see that online and your community sees that story and they see the city and they see the depth that you go to build your brand. And I think that's what ultimately resonates with them and why every your launch is a sellout.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah. And that's like the one final thing on this. I do think it's interesting. It is a choice. It absolutely is a choice. Every business has someone making a decision on the bottom line, even when it comes down to the packaging.
Yeah.
For me, when I get packages, it is disgusting the amount of disposable single-use plastic there is. And you're like, okay, if every brand took a step to do a slightly better alternative for the environment, think about how much wastage would be eliminated. And, for me, I baked into my pricing. I said, you know what, I'm going to package things this way. I'm not doing this, disposable plastic. We're going to do environmentally friendly packaging. And that was a cost that I knew that was a non-negotiable. We're going to do, eco-friendly cardboard versus disposable plastic. And I also don't brand my boxes so that people can reuse them afterwards, because you get, a great box and you're like, oh, I can use this. I can ship my brother a care package or whatever it is. And it's got a giant Skims logo on it or something. You're like, okay, I get it. I get packaging. I do. But for me personally, while I'm small, that's just one little extra step that I can take is, hey, guess what? Eco-friendly packaging, reuse it, wrap a birthday, Christmas gift in it. I don't care. It doesn't have to say my brand on it once it's done. So it's all a choice.
Let's zoom out for a second and look at how you brought your brand to the market and got your first traction with. Which sales channels would you say work the best for Sette?
It's definitely a combination. And I think going into this years ago, I really thought, you hear all these things about amazing DTC brands that are just online only and they save so many costs by doing that. That's important. And it is important to build that customer base and have those like native customers. But for me, pairing that with in-person events and like being boots on the ground, talking to customers, having exposure, letting people see you. And I was encouraged by a girlfriend to do a boutiques fair last year in November. And I did that, and that was really where things kicked off. I mean, my first few launches, because of my social media following, they did well, and it was great. And I was like, oh, finally people are, responding to the stuff, and I've got this audience that I get to launch to. Then I went to a boutiques fair and it was a sellout situation and I didn't have product by the end of it. And I was like, oh, that's different. So,
like, oh,
we need to do more of this. Yeah. And so I was still relatively new to the scene in Singapore and the industry, and still learning what pop-ups there are and what sorts of events you can do. And so now that I'm getting more into that, I'm saying yes to a lot of those opportunities that suit the brand. So that's been an amazing change of pace for us, is, actually being there on the floor, talking to people, seeing the fit, seeing people's responses as well. Someone might try something on and something that I thought would be amazing. They're like, oh yeah, that's cute. But, you're like, oh, okay, interesting. Maybe that is not the hero piece.
Yeah.
And then they try on something else and it flies off the rack. You're like, oh, okay, well, I just kind of liked that one. And now it's like the best one. And so it really informs your decisions going forward as a designer.
No, 100%. I feel like especially now when the online space is so saturated, like there is like endless launches, endless, content going out on social media. Like it's so hard to break through all of that noise. And that's what I always tell founders, the real value and power of being on the ground, like the IRL is so much stronger than URL sometimes.
So much more.
Yours like a perfect example of that.
And a little like caveat there is, people always ask me, oh, are you interested in retail and, having some serious retail partners? And, I haven't ever gone to like a major retail scale. I know that comes with its pros and cons for sure. But even kind of smaller retail here, what I've noticed, it's, kind of like what you just said, if you are not there, boots on the ground, pushing your own product, no one else is going to do it for you. So, you partner with a retail boutique and they have to take, 30 to 40% commission. And, sometimes if your product is not merchandised well, if it's hidden in the back or no one's recommending it and it's among a bunch of other products, it might not ever get noticed. And you might just be wasting product and letting it, deteriorate in a shop, because there is damages that happen with people trying it on and, sitting on a rack in a corner for a while. And so surprisingly, I haven't found retail as like this big kicker for me, unless it is some sort of pop-up event where you get to man your own space and present your own brand independently.
From doing these pop-up events like boutiques fair and pop-ups, what were some of the like lessons that you learned from doing those? Like, because you mentioned a lot of the like good stuff that comes out of it. You get your customer feedback. You get to see the way the customer interacts with them. Obviously, you're there, fronting and facing the brand. But was there anything that you learned being like, oh, I didn't think this would be like that?
Just exhausting. It's just, being on your feet 12 hours a day and hair and makeup, smiling and talking. I've never had so many coffees in my life. But we would always end the day with margaritas, because I have an affinity for spicy margs. So this will be more fun for everyone if we can have a margarita at the end of the day. So a little bit of alcohol was involved. But as for negatives, I would say, aside from maybe just physical labor and exhaustion, and then the odd damaged product from someone with makeup, but like those are so minor. Like those are really so minor. I would say I walked away just all positive from that, aside from just being tired and having a 4-day event.
Are there any event formats that you really wouldn't do, or like would have experienced in the past and wouldn't do again?
Yeah, I think I like the ones where they are like curated events that have like a marketing plan. So whenever someone asks me to do a pop-up, I ask what their marketing strategy is, because if it's not being properly advertised and there's not going to be a guaranteed crowd, it's not worth going. And so that's why, like, if it was like a pop-up at a mall that was kind of like a tiny little stand or kiosk situation, or just, I'm not even saying kiosk because it wouldn't be a kiosk, but if there's just something that's like, you want to,
you're just in the middle of a mall.
For 3 to 6 months, you can be in this mall. I actually would not do that, because aside from foot traffic, like you're not getting anything out of it. It takes major resources to do that. It's, you've got to be there, an employee's got to be there, you got to pay someone to be there. But you're not guaranteed a demographic when you just have generic foot traffic. And that's what I found really special about the more curated events, is you are reaching a specific demographic. And that is key to be, reaching your audience and getting this concentrated, I think also finite amount of time, because there's a sense of urgency there. It's, you're only there for 3 days, so people are going to come down and shop you. Whereas if you just have a generic pop-up for 6 months, unless you've got a very, very large, strong customer base, I don't think that's going to work, especially for Singapore. We don't really like to trek anywhere.
Yeah.
Like if it's an event or an occasion, we'll go, but I'm not going to go 3 kilometers down the road to go to a different mall that's like away from like my close mall. It's like, I've got my spot where I like to go. I'm not going to step outside of my comfort zone. And that's what everyone says. And I've seen other people do pop-ups like that. We're like, oh, we got this really great space for a great deal. We're going to do a pop-up for 6 months or 3 months or whatever it is. And they spend all their time and energy working on getting an audience there, because it's quite hard to do that in Singapore. So that's where the balance of the curated pop-ups versus the online presence is really key. And so those together is kind of really what's working for us right now.
And it's so similar. It's such a unique thing to Singapore. Hey?
Yeah,
it's like, like you'd think it's a relatively small island, and you think, oh, it'd be so easy to like jot from one spot to another, but it's actually whatever little communities there are, they actually stay quite contained within the little areas. It's so true.
I don't leave Tanglim Road. This was a stretch for me to come here.
Thank you. So staying on the topic of building in Singapore, obviously you are a founder and a mother while being an expat, and you managed to build something quite incredible with Sette. So what has it been like building a business and a life in Singapore as, you know, a foreigner, someone who lands here without knowing anybody and building something from scratch?
Long in a good way and a bad way. So obviously when you first get started, and it's sometimes hard for me to think back that far, but it really, at the beginning, it feels like you're walking in quicksand. You're walking uphill, up a mountain in quicksand. You know no one, the communities are so well formed that it's hard to kind of break into that. It's hard to figure out how things are done or where things are made or who knows who, or, I didn't know about Boutiques Fair until I'd probably been here for 5 years. So that's a long time to just be like, oh, there's retail here. That's crazy. So it really takes a long time to get things going. And like I said, I had really only been here about 2.5 years when I first launched the business. So I was fresh as a daisy in 2020, also going through a global pandemic when the whole world changed. So not the best time to start, but end of 2020 is when I officially launched as a business owner. And then I would say end of 2024 was when I feel like I really got rolling. And so 4 years, if you had told me back in the day it would take you 4 years to feel like you have a rhythm, I would have probably said, I don't want to do that. That's too long. And I guess this is a point that I really wanted to make. The biggest surprise is looking back, how much I appreciate the slow growth. Because when I first started as, an entrepreneur and designer, I wanted explosive growth. Yeah. I'd love to blow up overnight. I'd love to blow up on social media. I'd love to blow up the brand and be on Revolve and be on all these big places. How amazing would that be? What do I need to do to get there as quickly as possible? And, that's just not really how it works. There's definitely the unicorns where that does happen. But at the time, it was like, why is this not going faster? Why is this not going faster? And now that I'm in 2025, I've built what I've built, and I've got a family, and I've got a life here, and a friendship group and community. I look back, and I'm so grateful that it did grow slow. I'm so grateful that some things took a lot of time, because it means I got to have a better understanding of it and figure out how to do it even better. Had I blown up early days of social media, for example, I don't think I really would have had my priorities completely straight or my boundaries really in the right place at that point. And so, had I, wanted everything to get really big, I wouldn't have been in the right place, and it could have probably hurt me in the long run. And now that I've had this, nice slow growth over the last, 3 to 4 years of building a community, I can genuinely say it is a community now. Like, I've got people in my Sette DMs and my personal DMs who are like, have been there for the long haul, and they know everything. It's almost like talking to a sibling, where it's like, oh, they know, they can understand a reference that I'll make from like 4 years ago. And that's a very cool feeling. And I don't know if it would be like that if it was the other way around. And also for the brand itself, like, had I blown up when I first started, I wouldn't have had such a good hold on my production. I wouldn't have really found my design ethos the way that I've really like found them today. And I wouldn't be creating designs that are like so intensely personal to me and who I am. They would have been more, when I first started creating, I was creating what I thought other people wanted. I really wanted to do what everyone wanted. I was, what's cool now? What's fabulous now? What do people like now? And that really, people liked it, but it didn't really have this traction, There's another brand probably doing something similar. And it wasn't until I was like, this isn't working. And I'm not really feeling, I lost a lot of the passion for it. I was like, I'm just not feeling that love for it anymore.
So it feels performative.
It felt performative, and it wasn't me. So when it doesn't come naturally to you, it's tough to maintain. And I learned that lesson, and I got to see something flop. And it was like, you know what? Like, I'm not doing this anymore. Like I told you, I nearly quit. And at the end of the day, I was like, screw it. I'm just going to make something that I like. I'm going to do a round of stuff that I really want to make for myself. I got back into sewing. So I started actually hand sewing all of my prototypes and all of my samples. And that brought back a passion for it. And I had so much fun creating and making the pieces better and better before they went into production. Because I'd make something like, oh, that's great, but it could also have this and this, and I could do this. And then I'd wear it out, and I'd get feedback from people, and I'd check the fit, and I'd really get to live it before it went to production. And so everything became pretty much just what I wanted for me. And, I guess also because I had a following, people liked what I was wearing, and I got to share that. And so it was like, oh, I'm not wearing Zara, this is something that I've made and you can buy. And that was kind of the cool thing, is I was creating pieces that I loved, out of my brain, and other people now had access to it and were there for the whole journey. They saw me prototyping, they saw me sampling, they saw me choosing fabrics, and then they can now buy it online, and it's photographed and on my storefront. And that journey has just been completely transformative for me. And again, the slow growth is what got me to that place. Mm-hmm. And if it had been quicker, it wouldn't have been the same journey.
Honestly, I talk about it quite a lot too, like mm-hmm. that a lot of founders really want to go viral, mm-hmm. and they talk about virality, and there's so many of these case studies out there mm-hmm. of like building for virality. How do you engineer it? But it's a very double-sided coin, because mm-hmm. on one hand, yes, explosive growth, you get all this audience looking at you all of a sudden, but it can do two things to you, which can be very difficult for you to outgrow. Is one, you will become reliant on one channel. Mm-hmm. Like, for example, with TikTok, like mm-hmm. we've seen, TikTok nearly got shut down in the US, and all of those businesses that were very reliant on TikTok all of a sudden went flop, mm-hmm. So that's one of the way of how going viral can actually expose your business. And another way is similar to what you mentioned, is you might not have figured out who you are as a brand. You mm-hmm. might not have figured out what your boundaries are, what your real story is. Like, you might be still figuring it out. Yep. And if you happen to go viral at that point, it might play a very cruel joke with you, where the world will know you for something that you're actually not. Yeah, exactly. For the uncurated image of you, mm-hmm. and maybe an authentic image of you. And then how do you backtrack out of that? So I think the slow growth, if a founder can afford it, if you have a way to make it a slow growth, then I always advise that for brands, being like, if there is a way you can make it without raising money mm-hmm. and without going for virality, Agreed. Please, I'm begging you, try go as slowly as you can. And
kind of going back to like my journey as a mother and an expat and finding my legs over here, I think that for me, enjoying the journey, especially becoming a mother. So when I first started, it was, I want to grow, bigger. Then I had my son, and I still kind of had that mentality. And I remember being, a few months postpartum and working, and my baby had just woken up from a nap, and I was like, oh, I have to do this. And then I was like, what am I doing? Like, I am home with my child right now. Like, he's not going to be a newborn much longer. I'm going to go take a break, and I'm going to spend some time with him and before he goes to nap again. And that kind of put it in perspective. And I can't do that every day, but for me, it was like, let's remember to enjoy the journey, like on both sides of the coin, personal life and work life. And when I think about the brand, and when I got frustrated with the growth, but then I figured out a lot of things with production and designs, and I started kind of having this consistent calendar of production and designs in Bali with my dream manufacturer, and having these like little sellout moments, which were really exciting. Then I was kicking myself, being like, I should have done higher numbers, because that sold out, and I probably missed out on X amount of sales because I wasn't prepared enough. And I kind of kicked myself. I was like, wait. I was like, let's step back. I was like, let's be proud of ourselves for a second, because that was your dream, to sell out of your collection. Like, everyone just bought your collection. You've got nothing left. How amazing of a problem to have. And then second of all, like, if you can't enjoy that, you're not going to enjoy the future successes. And so I really had a come to Jesus moment there. It was like, I need to love what I'm doing every single day. So I'm curating my days to where they're full of like things that I love doing. Don't get me wrong. Once a week, I've got to do accounting or taxes, and it's awful. But that's at the end of the week. But I do bake in these things where it's like, I want to enjoy the journey, because what else am I doing this for? I enjoy content creating, and I do it in a way that is enjoyable for me. I, obviously love motherhood, and I do it in a way where I can fit scheduled in pockets of time with my son between my work day and between his naps and school. So I make sure that I'm also getting to enjoy that part of it. And then with work, it's, instead of rushing around, I have to get these designs made because I have to get the samples to Bali and I have to get into production now. It's like, how about I get to design some clothing today? How exciting. I'm going to take the whole day and I'm going to turn on some music, make a tea, and I'm going to just sketch. And, when I reframe things that way, it's like, oh my gosh, I'm living my dream. I get to design stuff today. And then I get to sew tomorrow. My work day is sewing. And when I reframed things that way, I was like, I love this. I've now remembered to enjoy the journey. I love my everyday, aside from the odd tax accounting moment. And then I'm so much more at peace, and I'm less rushed, And I'm probably making better business decisions because I'm less rushed. I'm less panicked. I'm less desperate for an opportunity. I'm more at peace with who I am, who the brand is, and what the brand is doing. So I don't feel like I need to say yes to everything anymore because I'm enjoying it all.
So pausing a little bit on the motherhood and ambition, tension and balance. Obviously you have a son, and so many female founders go through this very difficult journey to navigate, right? Like how do you build something, but then you have this child and you love it more than life itself, and you want to give it all your time, but then you also have your own ambitions and you feel guilty for wanting to do something for, it's a whole, we can do a whole podcast episode on just unpacking that, But how did motherhood shift your relationship with work, ambition, and your own identity? Because you already mentioned that you try to reframe everything and look at everything through, I'm so blessed to do what I do. But like, talk me through, how was motherhood for you?
So I recovered, like going back to like early postpartum days, just had my baby. I actually recovered from like physically postpartum pretty well. Like I was up and moving, a couple days after giving birth. And, I had a relatively easy newborn. I can't say that for my toddler. Difficult toddler, easy newborn. So, but he was an easy newborn. He slept really well. I was pretty mobile. After 2 weeks, I told myself I was going to take a whole month off of work. And after 2 weeks, they're sleeping so much. And I was like, I can do some work. And I kind of started getting back into it. And I was, at that point, it was my first pregnancy. And I was just so excited to get back to being myself. I was like, I need to get back to old Monica. And I was really set on that. And I wanted to, start working again, get my body back, go out with my girlfriends, have a drink, go on a beach vacation. I wanted to do all these things that I couldn't do for a while. And I think once I finally got there, pretty quick recovery. So I'd say about 3 months I was, running again and with my girlfriends, and I could go for a night out, having to probably pump in the bathroom, but like, relatively normal stuff. And then I kind of got there and I was like, for what? This is always going to be here. I'm always going to be able to be back to myself. And so I kind of reined it back in again. And I was like, I think right now my peace and I see value in being at home with my son and my husband, and not really being out in the world and going back to events and showing up and having to look perfect everywhere I went. And so it kind of reframed that for me a little bit, where I was like, this is more important right now. And slowly started becoming more okay with that. My husband would always tell me, he's like, just remember, like, this time is finite. And that really started getting to me. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, yeah. And so that's one reason why I really wanted to quit as well, when everything was kind of going south and I couldn't figure out work, and I couldn't figure out the production. And I told myself going into the Bali production, I was like, this needs to be different. I need to feel like I'm not panicked or rushed. I need to feel like I'm not, trying to get everything out because my factory is taking so long to do everything. And it's like, I just don't want this work to be a major stress. So value for me and success for me is being able to have peace on both fronts. Like the reason I wanted to, among many reasons, but one huge reason why I wanted to run my own brand and, have autonomy over my own life was so that I could have the flexibility to, if I wanted to work late, that was going to be my call. If I wanted to stay up late and grind and get something done, that's my call, not someone else's. And if I want to go home and spend all day with my son because he's not feeling well, that's my call as well, not someone else's. So that freedom was key for me. And that you kind of remember and go back, okay, this is, that Instagram trend, like I almost forgot this was the whole reason. Yeah. This was the whole point. And that's how I feel about like the past year, is that's been this is the whole point, is, obviously, yes, it isn't, for me, it's always been really important to have an identity outside of being just a mom. But also at the same time, if being just a mom is my identity, I'm very, very proud for that too, because that is where my joy comes from. But for me, I do think it's been very healthy to be able to have work as my personal creative outlet. That's where I get to thrive and be myself and have my own time. And then I'm fulfilled in that matter. So I get to come back and be a really good mom for my son, and I can be full on for him when I'm with him. And so I'm working on, I think, being okay with not being 100% great at everything. And there are going to be times like when I do boutiques fair and I'm out for 4 days and I don't get to see my son, or I have to go to Bali for a work trip for a week and I don't get to see him. There's going to be days where I don't show up 100%. That sucks, but that's also part of it. But on the flip side, I have to be okay with, there's also going to be days where I don't show up 100% as a business owner. Like Monday, my son wasn't feeling well. He had a really bad fall. We almost had to take him to the doctor. The whole day just got thrown up and I was like, you know what? Not today. Like, work can wait. I did not pick up my phone or my email. I didn't look at any of the stuff that I was supposed to do. And I got to spend a day cuddling on the couch with my son, because that was the most important thing right then. And I felt no guilt about it in that moment. And that's where I think this whole evolution has come, because in the beginning, there was guilt on both sides. When I was finding that balance, there was guilt for not working, there's guilt for not being with my son. And now I'm really working to get to that point where I don't have guilt if I'm not working, and I don't have so much guilt if I'm not with my son, because it's important to do both. And I'm such a better wife, mom, friend if I get that balance of things.
If you're comfortable talking about it, you can what role does faith play in all of this for you?
Everything. I kind of dabble with sharing it on social media, because again, it's extremely, I don't think faith is private at all. It is extremely personal. And that's kind of one of those things where that is probably one of my most vulnerable things, is that is the most important thing to me in my life. And sharing it online, I'm very careful with it, because it's like a precious jewel. I'm like, I don't want someone to throw mud at my precious jewel, kind of like my son and my husband as well. That's what gets me through the tough times. And I think also that's kind of my guiding light, is like where I get my direction. I mean, my relationship with God is, I think, what keeps me strong in the tough times. And, that's what has, it's gotten me through all my tough times, because I have the ability now with my faith, I get to put all the troubles and my burdens on God, because he wants to take them for me. And I do try to share that on social media. And there's been a few things recently that I've had some struggles that I've shared with my community. I lost my grandmother last year, sorry. I cry every single time I talk about her. She'd be so happy knowing that I cried about her. But I lost my grandmother last year. We were very close, and that was really tough. And went back to Texas for all of that, and it was beautiful and it was amazing. But the faith was the most important thing in her life. So I got to share a little bit about that. And then, fortunately, me and my husband actually separately both had a cancer scare last year. And fortunately, everything was okay and came back clear. But it was those two kind of situations where, like, you think everything's fine, you think you have your problems, and then your world gets rocked with something, and all of a sudden everything else disappears. And what are you left with at the end of the day? And for me, that was my faith in my family. And I think that also really helped with my perspective, because, all this stuff that we're talking about, it's all very important, and it's a huge part of my life and who I am. But your problems become very small when the real problems come up. And again, it kind of makes you think about what's important to you in your life and helps you reevaluate things. And that reevaluation is what I think has set my priorities straight. So almost like those tough times last year were blessings in a way to kind of just help refocus, finding my way through motherhood and, business ownership. It's important to kind of have those check-ins every once in a while and just kind of remember what's important and where your priorities lie. Because if you don't have your priorities straight and you don't know what you're working for, what's the point at the end of the day?
It's so hard. Again, it's so easy to get lost in all of it. It's so easy to start stressing about all the wrong things. And then you're like sitting with your kid and you're like thinking about work, and then you catch yourself. Like, it happens with me sometimes, like when I'll be with her, and then sometimes I'm like, I feel disassociating because I'm like in my mind, I'm like on my Notion page or somewhere else. And then I catch myself like, oh my God, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Like are you like, this is the most important thing in the world. Yeah. Like, if nothing happens for the rest of the week, like, if we don't create any more content or something, like all of that can burn in hell for all I care about. But this is the most important thing. And like keeping, like, having your priorities straight and understanding that you have your faith, you have your family, and then everything else comes after that is what really keeps you sane.
Yeah. And I think it's also so interesting because a lot of the like very intentional business owners that have an intentional brand and company or product, they're women because women are the ones that bear children, and women are the ones that have this maternal connection. They're the ones that are attached to their baby from day one until, they start walking, and even then some. And that's like a very tangible reminder of what am I doing this for and what's important right now. Whereas, I know my husband loves my son, all that. They're great dads, whatever. Men don't have that biological tie. It's not the same. So they, as a whole, don't sit over their Excel spreadsheets toiling over like, oh, I should be home for whatever. And I know that, he does want to be home for all this kind of stuff, but it's not as biologically ingrained in their brains as it is for us. So for a lot of women that I know, they're working with a very distinct purpose. It's, I'm building this brand or I'm doing this job, for this, with the most important thing being this. And so I think there's a lot more intention there when women are creating things.
100%. And actually so many female founders that I know started their brands either coming up to pregnancy or right after having a child, because they realized, like, you know, like for me it was something similar to that, where I remember the moment, calm down.
Well, I've already cried, so I was the first one. So like, if you need to cry, it's fine. I've already done it. Broken the seal. You know, we're crying on this podcast. But I remember the moment when, you know, she's born and they place you on your chest. And it's like, in that moment, it's like nothing can describe it. Nothing. You're just like, nothing in this world matters. Yep.
Like, this little thing, I will die for you. I will do everything for you. And it's like, and that puts everything into perspective. All of a sudden you say, I'm not going back to a job. I don't care. Like, we're going to cut back on expenses. We're going to move to a small, but I don't care what we have to do. But I will make sure that this is the like sole purpose of my living. And then you come out a bit of that, you know, euphoria, you know, having, you know, like going through birth. And then you realize, like, oh, right, how do I make this happen? I need to have my own business. Like, I need to have my own way of making money where I can stay with this thing, because this thing is the most important thing in the world. And you're so right. Like, so many intentional founders out there are women, I think, because of that. Because so often I ask them, like, oh, like, why'd you start your business? My child. Bottom line, my child.
It's amazing. And I think, you know, kind of like I said earlier, at first I didn't want my only identity to be a mom. And now I'd be completely proud and happy if that was my only identity, because it's my best identity. And I'm not saying it's like, oh, I'm a mom and I have kids. And it's made me so much more well-rounded, so much more empathetic, so much more sensitive, so much more sentimental about life. It's created so much more of me. And I think that's why I think it's such an amazing thing. And I think it's okay to be like, this is more important for me right now. Might be a long time, might be a short time, might be forever, might be, you know, whatever. But this is the most important thing for me right now. And guess what? That priority is going to take over the work priority. And I've got another girlfriend who I just adore, and she's just super successful in PR and had this insane job, Fashion Week, you know, every place in the world, every year. And she's recently been like, she's like, I'm ashamed to admit this, but like, I think I kind of want to be a stay-at-home mom for a while. And I was like, that's a victory. Like, that is amazing. That's an amazing thing to be able to admit and come to terms with, because the world doesn't really smile on that right now. It is looked at as a failure by society right now, because it's very much like you have to make success by being successful in a business. And what I'm coming to realize is success comes in many, many forms. And right now I would love to have success on all fronts. But, you know, I also think that something's got to give at some point. And, you know, while I might have more success in business at one point and maybe slightly less success as a mom, there's going to be a point where I'm going to have more success as a mom, but the businesses might struggle a tiny bit because I can't give it my full attention. And that's natural, and that's okay, and that's life, because your circumstances ebb and flow. Like, you're not going to have a newborn forever. So there is going to be a time where you have independent kids that are off with their friends and in school and summer camp and sports, and you're missing them and you're missing those moments. And I don't want to look back and regret missing out on those moments, because that's irreversible. Whereas I can look back on my business and be like, oh, you know, I'd like to try growing that more now. I can always grow. I can always develop. Just because I maybe slow down the speed a tiny bit of what I'm doing with the business doesn't mean that I've stopped or gone backwards. And so, you know, I can kind of say, like, you know what, I'm not going to try to go for a round of funding right now, or I'm not going to try to get on Revolve right now. I'm going to do my pop-ups, and I'm going to do my online sales, and I'm going to have fun on social media and connect with my audience and build slower there. And I'm going to be a mom. And then, you know, when the time comes when I'm not as in demand with my son, or if I'm really, really missing it, I'm going to do more. And then I'm going to be more ambitious and, you know, go after those bigger things and make those huge leaps that I'd been meaning to make. But again, that's kind of my whole lesson in enjoying the journey, is making sure you're actually enjoying it versus always trying to reach the next step. And that's where I think I kind of got lost in the beginning, is I was always going after the next step. And I remember kind of looking at my day-to-day in my life and being like, I don't really like what I'm doing every day. I don't really like this. I'm stressed out all the time. I'm climbing after things that, like, I'm just, you know, what's the word? Pulling at straws. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I felt like I was just kind of pulling at straws, that nothing was really coming to fruition, and I was really stressing myself out about it. And my husband was like, for what? Like, what? He's like, you're still like having business, you're still doing stuff, but it's not to the crazy extent that you think it should be. I was like, those are your expectations ruining your experience. And so that is when it kind of circled back. It's like, hey, like I'm doing this so that I can do what I love, and I'm not loving what I'm doing right now. And that was a major shift.
No, 100%. And I feel like it's a beautiful rounding to the episode. Like, I'm very happy that we finished with the touching up on motherhood and priorities, because it's really so important.
Yeah.
So thank you everyone for tuning into this episode. We have gone very deep on some discussions. We talked about motherhood, priorities in life, but then also how do you build a brand with intention and clarity and authentically show up online, creating content that really converts. Thank you, Monica, for coming. It was great having you.
Having me.
Thank you.
It was so fun to chat, and thank you for all the amazing questions. Next time we can have margaritas. Yeah.